Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to the channel. Appreciate you being here as always. Today, guys, this is going to be audio only. I have a special guest agreeing to sit down and talk with us. Some of you may know this guy, some may not. Either way, his name is Stefan Etienne. If you are or are not familiar with him, let's get started and dive right into this. Stefan, I want to thank you for agreeing to come onto the channel today and talk to us for a little bit. Good morning. I hope you're doing well.
Good morning, man. Thanks for having me.
Hey, not a problem, man. It's gonna be fun. I think that we're gonna, just have a fun little chit chat here and get the viewers to know you a little bit more. We'll get into like some of your interest in like your tech stuff and we'll just go from there.
Yeah, sure.
So we talked last week, and one thing that interested me in what you had mentioned was tennis. I
Yeah.
had no idea that you had played tennis. I'm sure you would put that out there somewhere, and maybe some people that know who you are knew that about you. I didn't. So, can you tell us a little bit about that? Kind of like when you got started, how you got your start, what spiked your interest in all that?
I would definitely say, yeah, tennis was my first love. I started probably around like 4 or 5 years old. I was into like the whole idea of like sports, but I didn't want to play basketball. I didn't want to play soccer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so like very, very young, so I didn't know all the sports, obviously, right? So
Right.
I don't know. I think the way that I remember it is there was like a Yellow Pages around the house because early
Yeah,
2000s.
back then. Yeah.
And, right. And I there was like an ad, for like a tennis center with like a picture,
Oh.
how anyone who knows what a Yellow Pages is, it's basically a massive book filled with phone numbers and ads,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's specific to the area that you live in or the state that you live in, right? And it's updated periodically, like seasonally, kind of like a magazine. And basically, you get information through that. That's like your directory. There's
Yeah.
and there was like a pictures in that are like super super tiny. If we want to like quantify it to today's
And
web
most were black
images,
and white.
yeah, it's black and white. It's almost like favicon size, if not a little bigger, like
Right. Yeah.
iOS icon size. And yeah, like it was that's what I saw. I saw like a blue hard court. And yeah,
Huh.
like I had my mom
Okay.
look into it and then, kind of got started from there.
Okay. That sounds kind of cool. I mean, a lot of people might be thinking, why are they explaining what a yellow pages is? But in today's world, younger
Yeah,
generation, they did not know what that is, just
I did
like
not know what that is. Yeah,
rotary
I'm
phones and stuff
yeah,
like that. So yeah, for those of you listening that think, why are they explaining what that is? I know what that is. There are some people that don't, and that's not even a thing. That's not a staple in their lives in today's generation, really.
right.
So, but okay, well that's kind of cool. I did not know that about you, like I said. So after tennis, is that kind of when tech came along and you got into that?
Yeah, I was probably around 12 and a half or so, and my parents split, and I wasn't able to play tennis as
Mm-hmm.
much.
Oh, okay.
And it was something where like I have to be there every day, like to get good. So I was like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
like at this rate, like I'm not going to catch up with my peers because I had a state ranking. When you play in the United States and you are a kid and you're trying to increase your skill and get better and eventually get sponsors and play in bigger tournaments, you enter an association called the USTA, the United
Mm.
States Tennis Association, right?
Okay.
And so if you start competing in tournaments and you start winning, right, you will get a state ranking based on your age group. And then the goal obviously is to, get big and strong as like a young adult or like
Right.
16, 17, right? Which is when some kids go pro also and get a state ranking. And then from
Mm-hmm.
there, start to compete in bigger stuff to hopefully one day reach the ATP, which is
Right.
basically the Men's Professional Tennis Association worldwide, right? So Yeah, I wasn't able to do that because of, familial reasons. And I was like, you know what? I am going to pivot because I'm always the type of person to take action. I'm a man of action.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, if this is not going to work out for me, I want to find something that I'm just as passionate about and can be
Ah,
exceptional at, pretty much,
okay.
And it was technology, but I didn't exactly know what that meant.
Mm-hmm.
So what I started doing is I actually started reading about technology.
Ah, okay.
And I started reading, you know, sites that had credible information, which at the time were sites like Engadget,
Mm-hmm.
CNET, Gizmodo, at the time, all those sites and others. And so Laptop Magazine. And yeah, like I started reading them and I was very curious about like the whole concept of reviewing those products that they
Ah,
were talking about. Not
gotcha.
because I wanted the stuff, but because I was like, basically there's like a one person. This was the question that I asked myself as a kid, basically. How is it that one person has 50 computers, right?
Right.
And then I started to do some research and was like, like I still can't figure this out. And so me being enterprising as I was, I created an email and I sent it to a lot of my favorite publications.
Oh,
And those people, you know who still write to this day, like can attest to this. Like basically I asked, how do these publications get these devices to review?
mm-hmm.
And some of them brushed me off and some of them gave me like empty answers, basically meaning like, we have them. They're basically like test devices. They're not ours. One person said it. And they didn't really answer like how that came about.
Oh,
But there was one person who, you know, lovely, lovely human being. Her name is Joanna Stern.
okay.
She's a two-time Emmy winner. And she explained in a very brief response that basically we go to the public relations firms that represent these companies and we tell them who we are and we say that we want to test this product and we get it on a loan.
Mm.
And I was like, okay, cool. And literally maybe 2.5, 3 months later, after I built my own website and, learned to how to go to Best Buy and like do a hands-on
Uh-huh.
and all of that different stuff. I was able to reach MSI, Microstar International,
Mm-hmm.
directly out of Asia, right? And then I was able to get routed to their American PR agency, which hilariously enough was also located in Miami at the time. I'm from Miami, Florida,
Oh,
FYI.
okay. So that's where you were at the time then.
Right. Max Borger's agency. I don't want to do a lot of name dropping, so I'll stop. But basically, yeah, they were like, "Hey, this sounds cool. The basically the tech musings of a 13-year-old sounds really cool to us.
Yeah.
We're gonna send you the MSI X600 laptop, and tell us what you think of it, and write something about it, and put up photos." And I was like,
Oh,
"Oh my
wow.
gosh, this is so cool."
And you're
But I didn't
13
believe
at
them.
this point?
And I was 13 years old.
Okay.
And yeah, like I have the names of the people I worked with and everything. Like it's hilarious when I catch up with them now because they're like, "Oh my God, you have a beard, like you're tall, like like I didn't know this was you. Like you really were a kid." And it was 2 days before Christmas actually that I received that laptop, which was hilarious to me. And I kind of took it as like a good omen because I was
Uh-huh.
like, oh, like I should probably keep doing this because
Yeah.
I don't think this is a fluke.
Right.
And it was something I realized immediately when I did that was when I opened up this computer and I started testing it, and I had never used Windows 7 before.
Uh-huh.
I was, oh, this is going to be hilarious for the computer folks out there who really like know all the computers that of the early 2000s, mid 2000s.
Yeah.
I was using a Dell E1705. That was the
Okay.
first laptop, a desktop replacement type laptop with a dual core processor. It had the Intel Core Duo,
Right.
and
Yeah.
it had a clock speed of 1.6 gigahertz. That's super fast for us back then.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was a speed demon
Oh my
back then.
God, that was
Yeah.
ooh! Oh my God,
Yeah.
installing Vista on that. Oh, don't get me started. Don't get me started. That was great. No, but that thing was falling apart. And so it was nice to switch to the MSI and actually be able to look at my website in crisp 1366 by 768 resolution.
Oh
Some
yeah.
people are probably like they're aghast right now listening
Yeah.
to
They're
this.
like, that's terrible.
But that is what it was back
Yeah.
then. And I think me knowing what that is and walking you through it is kind of testament to the fact that, yeah, I've been doing this for a very long time.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're aging yourself as far as tech is concerned.
I'm aging myself as far as tech is concerned, right?
Right.
And so the hilarious part about that story is I appreciated them sending it to me, but I was also in a conundrum. I didn't own a camera.
Oh.
And so, basically it put me on a new journey to use the new tool I had to continue to learn more about
Mm-hmm.
web design and web coding and learn HTML and CSS and
Mm-hmm.
PHP and all this other stuff, right? And eventually migrate my site from Blogger to WordPress.com to WordPress.org to get my own domain, to get my own email, and then eventually be like, okay, I can get my hands on a camera now from, I
Yeah.
think it was Olympus or Fujifilm, one of those.
Okay.
And then now I could do original photography and I had a laptop and I was set. Laptops back then had SD card
Oh
slots.
yeah. You
So
were
I
good to
was I
go.
was I was good to go. And after that, I started talking to AT&T, I started talking to HTC, and once that was done, I was Laptop Memo, the name of my site, still running today.
Okay.
If you go on the Wayback Machine and you run up Laptop
Yeah.
Memo, you can see the different years and how I adjusted the design over the
Right.
years and the design
Yeah.
language. But basically, yeah, that's how I got started, and that was like my
Wow.
tech journalism / tech beginnings. I started off hot.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So you basically started writing for them at that point, or no? Like you moved on
I
to.
started writing for myself. That was the thing. It was creating a platform for myself and becoming my own platform. And the first time I really broke
Mm,
cover and other people started noticing me was when I got really savvy with how tech was proliferated through the United States. And
yeah.
then at the time, the FCC used to publish, and for those that know, you can still find those stuff, but it used to be easier. The
Mm-hmm.
FCC used to, the Federal Communications Commission of the United States, used to publish its test results of devices that were upcoming so that they would pass their
Oh,
certification.
okay.
And at the time, they had a device called the Motorola Shadow. This was the upper right corner that they photographed of what was going to become the Motorola Droid.
Mm,
And
okay.
or one of these similar devices. It was called the Motorola. It was codenamed Motorola Shadow. And it went through a bunch of different names and stuff. But like basically, I figured this out. I posted it to my site. Engadget referenced me, and ooh, that traffic spike. It carried me. It carried me from there.
Wow. Okay.
I immediately, I was on the money. I was on the button. I figured out how to carry that traffic spike into my other articles. I was writing 5 articles a day. Then I boosted it to
Mm,
7. And at some point, I boosted it to 10 on days where there was like a lot of good news. I made sure not to regurgitate everything. So I would mix in like the news with some original stuff I was testing,
yeah.
maybe something I learned today that I would share with the audience. I had this thing called brevity reviews, which is like for something, it's in between a hands on and a full review.
Mm-hmm.
And some publications have actually, I wouldn't say they stole that idea, but they were inspired by it
Right.
because I was doing this stuff at the same time that they were, or a little bit beforehand.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, it was exciting because when I was running my own thing, I saw this site called This Is My Next come into fruition, and This Is My Next was the precursor to The
Oh,
Verge. So it's kind of hilarious
okay.
how I knew all those folks. I ended up working with them at The Verge many years later, right, as an adult.
Right.
And some of them did not even know that I knew them and I saw them come up, and I preceded them in many ways.
Okay. And so it just kind of like you're writing for yourself and doing your own thing, and that led you into the other stuff, like with
And that
Verge
led
and
me into this
TechCrunch.
other stuff, right? And so I'd say the segue into that, if that's what we really want to figure out,
Mm-hmm.
is Living in Florida, I would get invited to a lot of press events, but it's money that I don't have
Right.
to travel to these press events to cover them to increase the traffic and notoriety of
Oh,
my website.
right.
So at the time, my dad had moved to New York after my dad and mom
Hmm.
split, and I was like, this might be an opportunity for me to spend some time with my dad and
Yeah.
more importantly, get to these press events. That's literally what I was thinking. The most
Okay.
important thing for me to do is to get to these press events
Right. So
because
you moved
that's
up that
gonna.
way.
I moved up that way. My
Okay.
first legitimate press event was for the Samsung Continuum. That's where I met Eli Patel, Rosh Miller, and Paul Miller.
Hmm.
And basically they were like the three head honchos of This Is My Next, and then they became, some of the founders of The Verge many years later. And I introduced myself to them, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're that kid," and then they kind of like walked off, But I didn't care about that. I was more so interested in meeting the PR agents that I had been speaking to
Right.
all those
Yeah.
years, right? And it essentially Samsung had a different PR agent for every carrier they were trying to get a phone with, and all of them were at the event. And oh my God, that's what really closed the deal for me
Okay.
because they really couldn't believe that they were actually talking to a 14, 15-year old.
Right. At that time. Yeah.
That was a journalist and that was a blogger at the time, becoming a journalist.
Right.
And yeah, that's how I blossomed. I did that for many years with
Okay.
pretty much every tech company under the sun. And I would say the peak of it was, hanging out with Acer at the World Trade Center, testing devices
Right.
and
Yeah.
and looking over the city. And then, uh, sometime later, the editor in chief of TechCrunch is like, "Hey, I want to meet up with you at this cafe and talk to you about something, and just pick your brain." And I try to show off to him, right?
Hmm.
Because the day prior, I met up with HP, and they were testing the new HP Envy and EliteBook series. It had never
Oh.
been, released before. And I had these under NDA. And I know that also TechCrunch had them under NDA. So it was kind of like, oh, insider, insider.
Right.
I wouldn't be breaking any NDAs because here's another person that probably had one or knew of it already. And so I presented them to him, and he totally was uninterested. He's like, "I want you to write for us." And I was like, "Bet." I'm abbreviating, I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but
Yeah.
essentially, without going so deep into it, that's what happened.
Okay.
He expressed interest in me writing for them as a freelancer, and I was like, okay, I'm totally down for this.
Okay. So I was going to ask when he presented this to you, kind of how did you feel about that?
Oh, I was totally excited by it. I was
Okay.
like, 17, 18, going into college as a computer science major.
Hmm.
And, here's a major publication of the world asking me to write 15 articles a month for $155 each. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And I get to bring all of my content with me and I can backlink to my own stuff when appropriate.
Oh.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll take it.
Okay. Yeah, that works. Yeah. So that was like was that like your first big thing, like where you like, okay, my niche has paid off?
Absolutely. I was like, well, no, I was like, my niche has already paid off when I'm talking to engineers
Well,
and,
yeah.
I'm at press briefings and stuff. I'm representing myself and, companies like BT, which is a big telecom provider in the UK, are purchasing ad space on my site.
Mm,
So, like, I'm like,
nice.
okay, this is dope. Like, I have friends who are friends with folks at Apple who get me discounts on the iPad that's about to launch.
Uh-huh.
So I don't pay full retail price for it. At that point, I really do feel like, okay, I've done the full iCarly thing. I've self-actualized. And the TechCrunch thing is really just now me becoming a recognized professional for what I've been doing.
Absolutely.
And being paid per post, which is incredibly important.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's extremely important to, get compensated for what you do, of course. But
Right.
so how long did you write for TechCrunch?
Maybe like a year or so,
Okay.
or a little over a year, maybe a year and a half.
Okay.
I was laid off because Verizon purchased AOL, and then they did a complete restructuring, so
Oh,
they laid off all of their freelancers.
oh wow. Okay. And so after that time came The Verge. Was that after that?
Oh yeah, that was fast. I was talking to someone at The Verge 4 days after I was laid off.
Oh wow. Okay.
Um,
That's pretty
and
quick.
and they were telling me like, oh, you're cool and everything, but we don't have any openings right now.
Mm.
And then Nat Garan, she's awesome. She was at the time their tech editorial director. She was working under Dan Seifert, who was the guidebook editor,
Mm-hmm.
basically the reviews editor. And yeah, she was like, "Hey, like I want to meet up with you and chat with you about like the company and what you're up to." And
Okay.
we chatted, and they were like, "Yeah, maybe we'll reach out to you if there's any openings." And then Dan reaches out to me directly and is like, "Hey, man, can we get on the phone?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And we're talking. He's like, "Dude, like I have these laptops and I don't have time to review them. Can you review them?
Oh, okay.
I'll get your draft. I'll look it over, and if it's good, we'll publish it." And I was like, "How much do you want for it? Name a number." And I was like, "Generally, I'm new to this. Like, I don't really know a number. What
Uh-huh.
would typically be the market rate that you pay out to freelancers?" And he's like, basically, he's like, "I kind of respect what you've been doing. What is your number, right? And maybe we can meet that number." And then I say, like TechCrunch has been paying me like 155 per post, so like maybe 500. He was like, the phone went quiet, and I thought he hung up on me. He was like, "Dude, like we typically pay our freelancers like 1,000 at least for an
Really?
article." And I was like, "Oh," I was like, "What about if I were to take the photos?" He's like, "Well, let's just do the copy for now, but maybe in the future you can do the photos," right? They ended up letting me take photos in the
Uh-huh.
future. So I had this thing at The Verge called an artist ID or at Vox Media. So basically I could do everything that I
Mm-hmm.
needed to produce a given piece of work. And once it got approved, I could just send it out there, because on my own since I was 13, I'd been shooting, editing, and doing all of
Mm-hmm.
it myself.
Yeah.
So I needed um oversight and guidance, but I didn't necessarily need someone to do the work for me, right?
Right.
Or to take my photos or anything. But I did work with some awesome photo professionals and videographers at The Verge. I will say that there are some awesome folks there
Nice.
who have gone on to do their own thing, but like, yeah.
Well, it's always good to have those, professional contacts, especially people that you can click with,
Of course,
and
of course.
and I mean they, not only they become friends, they kind of help you professionally in life as well,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
they. So, Stefan, after TechCrunch, you ended up at The Verge, like we talked about,
Yeah.
and not everybody, but a lot of people they know you because of that, and that's unfortunate. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Sure, why not? I mean, Verge was interesting for me. I started off, like I explained earlier, like working there freelance, and they gave me a role working there on their guidebook section,
Mm-hmm.
basically writing reviews and doing full time news.
Okay.
And I pretty much landed that because I felt like my interview was the guidebook show. They had a live YouTube show basically,
Right.
and I was presenting gaming laptops with Haim and Eli, right? So pretty much, I had an extreme amount of fun working at The Verge. I have a ton of friends who are creatives who have
Mm-hmm.
gone on to also do. I'd say we all agree with each other way better and cooler things because the world is big, right?
Right.
Since leaving, and we've all stayed in touch, right?
Oh, good.
But like yeah, but like I would say what I had the most fun doing over there were creating my guides.
Yeah.
And the reason why I call them my guides is because a lot of them did not exist before I got there. And whenever The Verge updates these guides, my professional journalism profile, right, and all of my SEO links get updated as well
Oh, okay.
because it originally calls back to me basically. These include the guides to the iPhone, Android, security keys, how to stream, streaming
Oh,
services,
wow.
gaming mice, like what's the best gaming mouse, the infamous how to build a PC, right? And others like, gaming laptops and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of those guides were the guides I built in Chorus, which is their unique Vox Media's unique content management system,
Yeah.
to actually, make accessible to the world. And so it was very, very fulfilling to like publish something and then get the Apple News pushback on everybody's iPhones in the office at the same time,
Oh, yeah.
and know that like you have a sense of responsibility
Yeah.
when you do that, right? So let's go into the PC build situation, because
Okay.
I took that seriously and I hated how it turned out, and I also hated how I responded to it. But most of all, I despised the way that um, management supported me around that,
Mhm.
because it was like it was it was disconnected, basically.
Yeah.
You know, um, internally they were very nice to me, and I appreciate that. Externally, because they're protecting the brand,
Right.
like they're just throwing shots all over the place, right? So like there's at one point I hear that, and I'm skipping over the shoot because
Mhm.
I asked them, hey, I've built a PC before. My first PC is in my dorm right now. My
Mhm.
second PC is at my dad's, right? And all the other PCs that I've built are, I don't know where they are, but I built them, and
Right.
I'm comfortable doing this. And at that point, I wasn't just comfortable doing it. The work that I was doing at The Verge was on that computer. So it was
Mm.
left at like my desk at all times. Anybody could come by and check it out, right?
Yeah.
And so like they clearly saw that, like, oh, like he took the stuff out of the boxes and he made a computer, and like he's getting his paycheck, obviously.
Mhm.
Right. So like this is not something that I woke up the day prior and said, let's do this. What
Yeah.
I was a complete novice and a noob at was doing it on camera. And it is something that Linus, many years later when we did our video
Yeah.
together,
Yeah.
attested to. Doing it on video is entirely different than doing it for yourself,
And
right?
it's complicated. It can be.
Oh, entirely doing it different than doing it for yourself or even for work, which is what it was.
Yeah.
And I asked about like, hey, could we like schedule the shoot way before we actually write or publish the article so that I have time to look it over, and we can rehearse and stuff like that, because it's going to be complicated.
Yeah.
I was like, this is going to be like a 3-hour video, and they were like, 3 hours? We don't have time for that. It's going to be like 30 minutes. I was like, hold on.
Oh boy.
I was like, look at all the videos on the internet that exist right now of PC building. They are not 30 minutes. And the ones that are, they're like speed cuts. We're not going to really teach
Right.
people anything. And then, when it gets closer to shoot day, they tell me, hey, like this has to be basically part explainer, because this is Vox, right? So you've got to explain the parts that make up a
Mhm.
computer using, an
Right.
analogy. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll use the human body. I'll say the nervous system is, motherboard,
Right.
and the
Yeah.
brain is, the CPU, and the eyes are the GPU, and so on and so forth, right? But like, I had all of these shackles on me on producing this. Then when, came shoot day, I was basically rushed through it because
Yeah.
everything was done in just like a few hours. And this is a 9 to 5, and we didn't even start at 9, right? So on a Friday, right? So like people just they don't want to be. Nobody wants to be at work on a Friday, which I
No.
agree with. But it's
Right.
just like we got a job to do at the same time.
Yeah.
And so I immediately leave that shoot feeling like that was shit. Sorry
Yeah.
to swear, but that was not, like, I knew that was not good.
Mhm.
And I write my article, and it's organized correctly. And then, I get the photos for the shoot, and I'm like, okay, the computer looks good. And then I get the draft for the video like a weekend before it goes live.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, so there's nothing I can do about this. This is just what it is, right?
Yeah.
And I give the okay, because what else can I do?
Right.
And it goes live, and then because it goes live over the weekend, they have the whole weekend to roast it, and then Monday comes around,
Mm.
and so Capital One is calling The Verge and saying that we're getting harassed, and
Because
then
it
this
was
is making it.
sponsored by Capital One.
Because it was sponsored by Capital One, right? And then this is making its way back to me, right? And so like everybody has like this emergency crisis meeting. And I'm not gonna delve super deep into internal stuff because
Right.
that's not professional. But
Sure.
again, I'm just speaking to you about like the way that it just happened to me, basically.
Yeah.
At that point is when I started getting the racist messages, and I think a lot of people, they they misconstrued me saying, oh, like I feel like the pushback against this is racist or is
Right.
racist in nature because this is what I'm seeing in my inbox, in my Twitter, in my Instagram, you know,
Mm-hmm.
in my girlfriend's DMs and everything, right?
Wow, it went that
Um
far?
and 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 so like uh and at that point, like now they're addressing the editor-in-chief of The Verge and me together using racist messages and epithets, right?
Mm.
And now like he's coming to me and being like, oh, are you okay? And I'm just like, I'm fine. I care about my work because I have
Yeah.
built a platform before I came to this place, right?
Right.
And you know, like you guys like shackling me pretty much is having all of this blow up in our faces.
Mm-hmm.
And so like my frustration carries off into my own stream that night,
Right.
right? Where I admit that like I responded negatively to the way that the community was responding
Okay.
to the situation. But like it's, you know, you can bleep this out, but if you're being called on Twitter, like you don't want to be called that. You get pissed.
Right. Yeah.
And you know, like it's ridiculous because this is from people with faces, right? This is
Yeah.
not from, you know, again, sorry to swear, this is not from people with, you know, invisible avies.
Yeah.
So um that's genuinely what my response was. And when stuff started to cool down and I was like, okay, it was a big mess up. I've just got to stay focused and keep
Mm-hmm.
writing and worry about new reviews. And you know, The Verge, you know, doesn't want me to appear on video for a little bit for obvious reasons. All of a sudden, their lawyers start to take down everybody's videos, right? And I'm
Right.
just like, oh, great. Now they are gonna try to really come after me because this is something that I tried to
Yeah.
uh, somehow take into my power to do. And then they flip flop and put the videos back. And so like it's crazy. It was
Yeah.
so misguided. I admit that I had some part in it. In the fact that maybe I could have been more more steadfast about like the way that it was filmed
Right.
and stuff like that. But you
Sure.
know, when you are 21, 22 years old and you're in college and you're making 57K a year
Mm-hmm.
writing about computers, it is kind of a dream for you.
It is.
And given the fact that you started this blog on an air mattress when you were 13, like it, the sense of like, okay, I need to keep moving forward no
Yeah.
matter what is more paramount than any other type of situation you could dream up because it
Yeah.
really is life and death for me. It's
Sure.
like I don't have a rich family. I don't have someone to fall back on.
Right.
This is it. And so yeah, like I was the most annoyed. The community was annoyed. I was the most annoyed because, you know, I always wanted to put out the right stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's why like I went on a guide spree thereafter, creating all of those other guides because I was like, look, like, you
Mm-hmm.
know, I have so much knowledge to share and expertise about stuff that I've
Yeah.
tested and experienced. And it has nothing to do with, you know, the way that, you know, a corporate entity wants to
Exactly. Yeah.
film a PC build, right? And lo and behold, you know, when Linus, awesome dude, when he, you know, when we come up with the idea to like be like, hey, let's do a video together, um, you know, full disclosure, he basically tests me before we film that video,
Mm.
just to basically be like, hey, do you actually know, you know, like how the
Right.
proper way to do stuff and like the way that we do stuff here?
Yeah.
And you know, I did, you know, and then we built a computer together
Right.
and it did 2.7 million views in like
Yeah.
24 hours.
No, it's a
So
good
like
video.
yeah, and that's really the whole story, at least from
Okay.
my perspective. That's how
Yeah.
it went down.
Yeah.
And you know, it was an incredible learning experience. Some people say, "Oh, does that like affect your ability to get like work now?" Actually, no. For the work that I do now as like a content marketer, you know, basically working with the actual tech companies that I used to review the products of,
Right.
right? You know, they take that and they've approached me in person and have been like, that is like such a powerful moment. And we don't have many executives that could overcome that and still be effective
Yeah.
and still have people listen to them and like, and be liked by the community in the end.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, like I appreciate the learning experience, but I would never do that again. And if I were running a publication, I would never treat one of my writers
Yeah.
like that.
Oh,
I
for
would try to
sure.
make sure that they were supported and do it in a way so that at least the community saw that
Hmm.
I was at least nurturing them
Yeah.
after a big mess up, right? Instead of trying to bury everything under the rug, right?
Right.
But it's corporate. I don't care for it. I had my own platform and I
Hmm.
continued to exercise that, and it brought me so much more success after.
Well, and that's what I
So
was gonna ask. Like all of
yeah,
that and everything that happened, everything you went through, is like it brought not only you more success with things, but I think that it's also like Linus says, like or you said, like you're 21. Everybody makes those kind of mistakes. PC building, even Linus said that every mistake that was made, he's done that. You know,
yeah,
and then especially on camera when you and I talked, I told you I did I've done one computer build on camera, and I can tell you it took 5 times longer to build that PC, and because I had to keep stopping because I said something wrong or made a
yep,
mistake. I
yep.
did a I did a cooling system upgrade on my own PC, and I did that on camera. That's what, a 30-minute, 45-minute job? That took me almost 3 hours. Do it on
Jeez,
camera.
but it
So
makes sense.
there's a whole big difference, and I think that I agree that people don't understand there's a huge difference, on camera. And it's like you've already said, like, yeah, there are things you probably could have done better, but who cares? It's like we've all been in that situation where we could have done better at something.
Yeah, and now like thermal paste is like a meme that the PC community
Yeah.
uses on everything now, so it's great. It all worked out.
Right. And I think more, like Lina said, I think more people learned, from those
What
memes,
not to do?
what
Yeah,
not to do
then
and how
what
to
to
do
do?
things. So I don't know. I think in the end, it turned out good for you.
Yeah, I do. The only the part about it that annoys me is like there are sometimes people still to this day that will try to like make an issue out of it, and I'm just like, literally, the world has moved on.
Yeah.
Actually, like not just me, not just the people that I want to work with, or my friends, or family, or the PC building community. Like literally, the world has moved on from
Yeah.
it. So like, let's build something different. How about that? Let's build another
Right.
PC together.
Yeah.
And so that's actually something that the community has asked me to do. And so, once I'm able to get out of like my unemployment,
Hmm.
issue right now, which is basically just everyone, as you might have heard, in the tech world has gone through some sort of,
Yeah.
layoff in the past year or two.
Yeah.
And, I've been affected by that. So I've been trying to land a role for a
Yeah.
while.
For sure.
And once I'm into that, like I absolutely want to do a PC build.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Because that's expensive, so
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely. Well, I mean, I think you've already redeemed yourself on Linus's video. It was a great video to watch, and
Thank you.
I thought it was awesome for you to do that. How did you feel about Linus's little jokes here and there?
I was okay with them,
Yeah.
because maybe the only one in the end that was not, that was kind of funny to me that I didn't feel like was rehearsed. Like maybe he
Right.
came up with it off the dome was like, maybe not for computers, but like I don't
Yeah.
mind because like we did such good stuff together. We really did that. We actually were having fun.
Yeah.
Him and I actually like had to troubleshoot because there were certain parts and stuff that we didn't have,
Hmm.
and we actually like he wanted to mount up the cooling fans, right?
Hmm.
And we made a mistake and we had to start over, and we kind of laughed about it because like yeah, like here we are making a video about what not to do, and we did that.
Right.
So it is a very human thing in trying to build computers,
Completely.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and so I don't mind. I think he's a cool dude. Like,
Yeah. I
I'm,
think
I'm,
that
I'm
he's got a good sense of humor and is very good natured.
yeah, I think he's a cool dude, and I'm a good sport. So I think it
Yeah.
was a good match to be able to make that happen.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Well, I appreciate you going into it and just kind of explaining, your
Of
perspective
course.
of that as well. So, one of the last things I wanted to talk about, and maybe you've given this some thought, or maybe you haven't. I'm talking like advice for like aspiring tech creators. Like, what would you tell someone that comes to you and says,
Mm.
Stefan, I want to get started in doing what you're doing or some kind of tech? It doesn't have to be writing or marketing or anything like that. Just anything in the tech world. What would you think about telling
So first, I would say if it's writing, don't, because
them?
this is something I tell people. My story is not possible today, and that is not to say that someone can't persevere and trailblaze like I did.
Right.
If you want to do something, go out there and do it.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the markets have changed. Interacting with PR agencies have changed.
Yeah.
Influencers claiming that they have expertise about things and getting products for free and tarnishing that whole relationship with companies is a thing, you
Yeah.
know? So like the whole landscape has changed. So it's not as easy to go into this industry and do
Hmm.
stuff.
And it will
But I,
continue to change also.
and it
It's
will
not
continue to
something that
change,
just
right?
stays. Yeah.
It is not static. It is a thing that ebb and flows. And, if you are interested in technology and you do want to produce content or produce things around technology or get into technology in terms of like engineering, the first thing you've got to do is figure out what it is that you are passionate about in that vein. Because for me, when I was 13, I was like, oh, I like computers. But what it really was that I liked is that I liked the ability to test a variety of different
Hmm.
things to a conclusion about what is the best thing to use for a specific purpose
Yeah.
and how does it work. And, that's what led me onto the path that, I've ventured on so far.
Hmm.
And for you or for someone else, that might be totally different.
Right.
So yes, if it's in tech, understand that that is a big umbrella. And now you've got to figure out which handle to hold on to.
Absolutely. No, that's great advice. And like you say, I think it coming from you, it's could be different than like what I would say. Um, you know, same thing. But my answer would pretty much be the same, even though I don't have the writing experience. But yeah, just the biggest thing for me is it changes. Be prepared for that. Don't think that you're just going to sit around and do the same thing for 20 years and then retire.
Yep.
It's a like you said, a big umbrella. So well, great, man. I really appreciate you being here and agreeing to do this. I've had a lot of fun with this,
Me too, man.
and
Yes.
and
It was great.
yeah, we'll stay in touch. And but yeah, thanks. I really appreciate it.
Likewise.
All right, man. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
Take care, man. Have a great weekend.